I'm picturing the two guitar players here sort of back to back, shoulder to shoulder, looking back at each other as the harmony happens. There's not enough guitar harmony happening these days. Would you agree?
I do.
There were a few things that made the 1980s, a special decade.
That's odd because I watched a great 1980 movie over the weekend in honor of Ray Liotta. I watched Goodfellas yesterday.
I can't believe Ray Liotta died.
I know.
Well, I can believe it.
And is there an amount of times you can watch Goodfellas?
No.
Before it gets old?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's provided some of the greatest gifts of all time, like Ray Liotta, like doubling over and losing himself in laughter in the lounge with this fellow. I've used that gift several times in response to tweets when I just can't find the words. R.I.P. Ray Liotta, dead at 67, I think it was. It was like Friday, I think, that we found that out.
Getting remarried, he was engaged, he was filming a new movie, and it was pretty sudden, actually.
Yeah.
That scene, too, when Joe Pesci, when he's laughing at him, and Joe's like, "Oh, you think I'm funny?"
Yeah, you think I'm funny?
Funny how?
Joe Pesci.
You think I'm a clown?
Oh, my gosh. Unbelievable. Good Monday morning to you, everybody. It's May 30th, just about June here. Jesperson and Hicks coming up on today's show. We're excited to check back in with Brandi Morin. She's going to join us. She says to us, we're figuring out what time we can do our interview. She's like, this is like my absolute must be out time. She kind of knows real talk. I mean, sometimes we're like, our times are ish because we start getting into these conversations. Like, for example, you and I might start reminiscing about our favorite scenes in Goodfellas. She's got to get to the airport. She's in Montreal right now. She was at the Canadian Association of Journalists Awards. But there's a lot going on. We'll talk to Brandi a little bit about that, but there's a whole bunch of other things going on, including the New York Post over the past number of days, and they continue to push that story out, calling the story of Canada's residential schools, not the overarching story of the schools, let me be clear, but the so-called rediscovery or the reminder of these mass graves. I mean, the 215 near Kamloops, which sort of started off this national conversation, this national mourning, this national anger. You'll remember last May, last June into July, and then, of course, up to the first day, the first ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in Canada. The New York Post is calling the story fake news. And then journalist Terry Glavin in the National Post following up as well with the story just a couple of days ago. And I know it's got a lot of people talking, that's for sure. Brandi's, if I can tell by her Twitter, furious about it and gut punched are the words that she's using. Says Terry Glavin's headline in the Post 2 days ago, how the world's media got it wrong on residential school graves. We'll talk to Brandi about that. And then the Titan of Talk in his regular bi-weekly spot on the show, Charles Adler. You'll say, but hang on a second, he was on the show last week. He was live from Las Vegas. We had to check in with him. Of course, the news of Alberta Premier Jason Kenney's resignation. Charles will join us now in his regular spot, and we've got a lot of ground to cover, including the NRA Convention over the weekend and the rise of what Charles is calling the rise of Christian nationalism in the U.S. It's not just Charles calling it that, but we'll get his take on it. I'm curious what it was in particular that got him thinking about that. Plus, we launch our question of the week today, and we're talking about guns for obvious reasons. I know that everybody's still probably still in some sense of shock over what happened in Uvalde, Texas. Nearly 20 elementary school-aged kids murdered by a gunman, a couple of their teachers as well. And you can't really find adequate words to talk about that, but we try to endeavor to do so here on Real Talk, and so that is what we'll do by way of our question of the week. We wanted to put it in front of you, an opportunity for you to have your say with some questions that'll allow you to select multiple choice answers, and then some fill in the blanks so you can kind of pour out exactly how you're feeling. You can take our question of the week every week, presented by our friends at Y Station, under the Connect link at ryanjesperson.com. Under the sponsors link on our website, you'll also find the teams, the groups, the partners, the amazing supporters that keep this show going every single weekday morning, and that includes our title, Coin Well. I know a lot of people have been trying to make sense over the past number of years, most especially maybe the last year or two, the role that Bitcoin will play in the future of finance, whether it's where people are saving their money or how transactions are completed or so-called financial sovereignty. It's for some people in a big way. They call them Bitcoin maximalists. And for other people, you go, I don't even understand the first thing about this. If you're endeavoring to learn a little bit more, I recommend you talk to Benny and his team at Bitcoin Well. They'll take any question. Trust me. You'll find them under the sponsors tab at ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
As mentioned, our good friend Brandi Morin in Eastern Canada this weekend in the beautiful city of Montreal. Pretty sure that's where she still is. We'll find out in just a second for the CAJ Awards, the National Awards for the Canadian Association of Journalists, and it's where Canada's top storytellers go to celebrate excellence in their craft. Brandi herself, an award-winning Cree Mohawk French journalist based out of our home province of Alberta, and her work has been featured all over the place, including The Guardian, The New York Times, Al Jazeera English, CBC Indigenous, Elle Canada, Vice, and she's got a new podcast documentary just released with Canada Land. We want to ask her about that. Brandi joining us live on this Monday morning. Thank you for making time for us, friend, and welcome back to the show. It's good to see you. Brandi, we just need you unmuted. I think we got you muted right now.
Yes.
Johnny. Well, there we go. I can hear your voice. It's good to see you. Thanks for making time for us. Yeah, you're
how was you? Quebec. From Montreal.
Yeah. You had an opportunity to attend the CAJ Awards, Canadian Association of Journalists Awards this weekend, and I want to ask you about that, but it seems to me, and I've been following you along, I mean, I'm always checking out your tweets, but it looks to me like you had a chance to kind of go investigate some of your own family history over the course of the weekend. Yeah. You were on what looked to be a pretty meaningful adventure.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is something that I've wanted to do for years. And I didn't even connect it, Ryan, because I was coming to the CAJs and I always have a lot of different things going on. But when I got here, the second day I got here, I just realized that Kahnawake is, about, 20, half an hour drive away. And I have ancestors from Kahnawake. So, one of my grandfathers traveled to Alberta. He was a voyager. He was called the Sun Traveler or Karakwante. And he traveled to Alberta in the fur trade, and he intermarried with my Cree ancestors. And I've always wanted to go back because I've always been fascinated with that part of my heritage, the Haudenosaunee heritage. And so I decided, I'm going to do it. And it was absolutely incredible. I mean, I only had, half a day. But, when I was there, we have blood memory in us, okay, because we carry the DNA of our ancestors, and it's scientifically proven, that we have this blood memory. And so I was there and I was like, wow, I could be walking in the same areas as Karakwante or his parents and other family members that, were dreamers like me and sun travelers. And I could be, where they prayed for their future generations, where they prayed for me. And it was just beautiful. And I swear there was just a little welcoming because I don't really even know anybody from there, nowadays. And so I went there and there was these beautiful little blackbirds, and they were singing to me, and it was, oh my gosh, it was amazing. And then I went and met with Elder Billy Two Rivers, and he was a world, champion wrestler, and he's 87 now. And I went and visited him in the long-term care facility that he lives in, and he was able to tell me the stories of Karakwante. And he said to me, your family, it doesn't matter how long you guys have been away, but your family. And I was incredibly grateful. And he said, you have to come, you and the others, because Karakwante, he fathered a legacy in Alberta. We're a part of the Michelle Band that was originally located west of Edmonton, just outside of St. Albert. And our band was corruptly enfranchised, by the government. And we have, gotten together again, and we've been in, it's a long story, but we've been in, talks with the feds for recognition again. Right. And so it was kind of like a coming home. And it was really amazing. And I'm actually still trying to take it in because it was just yesterday.
Well, so. and I'm watching and I'm seeing that observing your posts, and you shared. I want to show our audience this as well. This incredible video. By the way, my son Wyatt just had an annual powwow at his school on the Friday, and he came home Just talking about the significance of this, and they had obviously a learning opportunity there, and they had the elders come in and Indigenous leaders and storytellers come in and erect this massive teepee outside their school. It was just amazing. And so that was kind of
that, Ryan?
That was it. Well, I don't say where he goes to school, Brandi, but near in sort of central Edmonton at an elementary school in central Edmonton. Very cool stuff. And he's just been talking about it all weekend. He didn't even know what he was getting into, right? He says, but I'm showing some video. Yeah, this is what you posted. Tell us what we're seeing.
Yeah, but
here.
I went across to Kanesatake. So there's Ganawake and then there's Kanesatake. That's where, everybody would be familiar with the Oka, crisis.
Right.
And they're another Mohawk community. And I actually know some people there, and I visited with them and seen the pines and of course a little bit of the beauty of, the culture there. Yeah. It was incredible. And I'm going back. It was too quick.
I wanted to kind of lead with this, so to speak, because I just think it is so important, and it sort of is a reminder of, you having an opportunity there. I don't know, it's not irony, it's the opposite of irony, but this sort of beautifully dovetailed experiences you had this weekend. You're there surrounded by, dozens or hundreds of your peers, these journalists across Canada, yourself among them, of course. And then also you have this opportunity to really get into your family's history and like you said, your blood history. And I was curious, I wanted to ask you what sort of an impact that has. You're telling us that you're still processing it, which is understandable, but if it sort of reiterates to you maybe the importance of what you're doing, the storytelling that you're doing, in particular through an Indigenous lens.
If it reiterates, yes, because you know what, Ryan, like my grandmother passed away in 2008, and we were very, very close. But at that time, there was a lot that I was unaware of. And I knew that she attended this convent, but I didn't know what a residential school was at that time. I didn't, know, like it wasn't, talked about a lot. So it wasn't until I became a storyteller, a journalist myself, and I started investigating, our history and, this, telling Indigenous stories, that I really found out about a lot of these things. And it's been like that way for a lot of our people too, because they may have, parents, grandparents, or other relatives that have been affected by the residential school legacy or other, violence of colonialism. But a lot of times it wasn't talked about. It was uncomfortable and very traumatic, but it was seen. It may have not been talked about, but it was seen. And it was seen in the form of a lot of brokenness, a lot of, like in my family, there was, my Kukum struggled with alcoholism, and most of all of her relatives and siblings died of addictions related, tragedies. And so I seen those effects. I just didn't know what they were from. And so, yes, it's been a whole journey, and being the journalist that, specializing in Indigenous stories, it's a journey of reclamation and reconciling my own identity as well, because I had, the exposure to the, all of the, what would you call it? All of the consequences that came out, of, the colonial violence, that our people had been faced with and still are faced with. So absolutely, it's kind of like it was like a coming home, but there's still a long journey ahead. And yes, I just feel blessed, because not everybody can come, this way and be able to experience that. And I even said, like, it really hit me, because like not everybody can trace their roots literally back to like millennia.
Yeah.
Where they're at. And I can do that in Alberta through my Cree heritage. I can do that here, in Ganawage through my Haudenosaunee heritage. I can't necessarily do that through my French heritage. I have to go back, to Europe. But this was an incredible opportunity, to just to walk there, walk in these footsteps, and to just revitalize all of these, pieces about, us and our people that were stifled for a long time.
You last joined us on April 7th, I think it was, and we were talking to you about what a remarkable experience, a powerful experience it was for you to be at the Vatican as the Pope apologized for the Catholic Catholic Church's role in residential schools. And we talked at that time, and I so appreciated your candor in that interview about the emotional toll that it takes on you to do this reporting. I mean, you've traveled literally across the country, and you've spoken to people, you've spoken to survivors, and you've seen the multi-generational impacts of these residential schools. I wanted to establish that context for what I want to ask you about now, which is this New York Post story that's got everybody talking about. I mean, it's obviously one of the biggest newspapers in the world, and the headline reads, "Biggest fake news story in Canada. Kamloops mass grave debunked by academics." And you've told us how you've felt about it by way of your Twitter account. And you tweeted just the other day, this was just yesterday, quote, "The anger and shock I felt last night," you write, "burst out into rebuking Bernier and corporate tabloid, that New York Post. You say, I'm sickened, gut punched, and I felt suffocated from that pain and disbelief." Take us into how you're feeling and why.
So, we get the residential school, deniers and such, here and there. But I was just stunned to see a newspaper or a media organization as large as the New York Post share something like that, publish something like that, because I had known of it, but I didn't know much about it. And afterwards, I was told by some people that apparently it's kind of morphed into more of a tabloid style publication, but it doesn't matter, because people take that literally, and they have millions of followers. And for the deniers that are out there, or for people that are still caught in the grips of ignorance and racism, that is fuel to their fire, and that is fuel for further harm and further violence. And I just was on Saturday night when that came out, I was just feeling like my heart was ripped out, and that I was literally like experiencing flashes in my mind of like just wanting to hit a punching bag. And it was just these mixed feelings, but I just I thought of the survivors that I've interviewed over the years, and even the survivors who have shared with me firsthand accounts of them, seeing their school classmates or their cousins, dying in front of them in residential school. And one survivor, or actually more than one, two I interviewed, that were forced to dig the graves for their classmates. And Bernard Anderson that I interviewed for the CBC a few years ago, he ran away from an Indian residential school in Inuvik with his two friends in the 70s, and they tried to make it home to Tuktoyaktuk, and his two friends died. They didn't make it, and he was a kid, and he was the only one that made it. And they're saying in this article that there's no proof. Where are the bodies? And that, this is the biggest, biggest fake news story in Canadian history.
Mm-hmm.
And our people have lived through this and witnessed this and have known this. It's just the world that has only known about it for the last year. And it's so frustrating that there are these, deniers. It's like, what is the point of what they're doing? We all know about the crimes and the violence and the, everything that was done in the name of hate. We're not the first peoples that this kind of violence was done to. There are other, races, other cultures where things like this have happened to. And I don't understand why they want to be, attacking what they say. And in the article, one of the professors says people won't speak out against it because Canadians are feeling guilty. So they're feeling quiet. Maybe if you're feeling guilty, you should sit with that guilt. You should, the authorities that did it should feel guilty. You should feel guilty about the idleness that you're enabling right now for all of the continued violence that is happening to our people. And whoever said, yes, I know this process of reconciliation and healing and everything is ugly, it's rough, but we have to move through these emotions. But there comes a time when that has gone too far. That is, to me, hate speech that they are promoting. And Maxime Bermer, I don't know if you've seen his tweet, but he shared it and in agreement that it was fake news. And there's over 500 and some retweets, and that tells you where a lot of people are at. And I just felt hurt and protective of, the survivors and their families, and just because a lot of our people are still living under oppression and racism. And so that will incite and encourage, more violence. And I was just stunned that this so-called, leader, Maxime Bermer, that he had the audacity to put something like that out. And if that does not tell you the moral character of a person, then I don't really know what else does. It just comes from a complete place of hate and denial.
Yeah. Anyways. So this is the leader of the People's Party of Canada. Everybody knows Maxime Bernier. Yeah, just declares it was fake news. And then he links to the story. I mentioned this one. This is sort of the...
Yep.
There are these two stories running, right, Brandi? One of them's in the New York Post, the American publication, obviously, and then one in the National Post, Terry Glavin, who, the headline, "The Year of the Graves, How the World's Media Got It Wrong on Residential School Graves." Mr. Glavin argues that and speaks to, including Indigenous leaders, like including in Saskatchewan, for example, where he says, these graves are not necessarily residential school graves. They could be Catholic cemeteries, right, where wooden crosses have long since decayed or disappeared, and so there's no record of who is buried there, etc. The New York Post story is arguing, and this individual that you mentioned, this professor, it's Jacques Riard, a professor at Université de Montreal, says, quote, "If cultural genocide happened at the school, there should be excavations, but everything is kept vague." He says, Canadians feel guilty, so they keep quiet, as you referenced. We've had an opportunity to speak with Indigenous leaders from some of these communities and to talk about, the excavations and whether or not that would happen, and if so, when or how it would happen. And it seems to me to be on a case-by-case basis, a decision that would be made by each community. I guess I don't really know how to frame the question, but what would be your response to the assertion that excavations have to happen to sort of prove the reality of what the ground penetrating radar has exhibited or has indicated?
Yeah. I mean, yes, you're exactly right. It's a case-by-case basis. I mean, the graves are still being unearthed and discovered across the country. I mean, the New York Post did put in that article that there's been 800 graves found since then, and it's way more than that. And I just want to point out that even the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, officially confirmed in their report several years ago 4,000 deaths, but there are up to 30,000. And you got to understand, it was cover up after cover up after cover up, and there were poor records kept. And so this massive undertaking that, by the way, the Truth and Reconciliation asked the funding for from the federal government about 10 years ago to start researching and looking into this back then, and they were denied that. And it was the First Nations themselves that started putting, their own resources in to searching, for answers. And after these bodies were found in Kamloops, then the feds came up with more money, and some of the provinces, came on board to help fund, these searches. And so, from what I understand, Tecumseh's, their leadership there are looking into, excavations. And again, I'm not familiar with the literally, hundreds and hundreds of First Nations across the country, what their individual plans are. But I know that they're at various stages right now of either using the ground penetrating radar, method, or, other methods. But I can tell you that I have been to grave sites where former students have recounted burying their fellow classmates, being forced to dig. I have heard firsthand accounts of, children dying, and then witness them dying and being taken away. And in many cases, never seeing them again and never being told what happened to them, not only them, but their parents never seeing, their children again. So it is an absolute nightmare. It's like a horror story, but it's true life. And, I think that the communities, despite their grieving and pain, are doing the best that they can, throughout this process. And I really don't think it's up to this professor or anybody else, frankly, outside of these communities, to tell them what they need to do, throughout this process. So I know that our people know, and the survivors know, what occurred, and they knew long before it was revealed to the world.
Real Talker Sharon Morin's watching this live. I've had a chance to meet Sharon just a couple of weeks ago. Just a wonderful human being. She says, I'm just so sick and tired of always having to prove to non-Indigenous people our history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Jillian's watching. By the way, Jillian made her Real Talk debut. Absolutely nailed it last week, talking about the CBC French debate. She says, how many Catholic cemeteries are outside schools that white children attended? How many white children are unaccounted for? How many white children witnessed classmates being murdered? Fair comment. What did you notice trend-wise when it came to who and what was recognized and celebrated in Montreal over the weekend at the CAJ Awards, the Canadian Association of Journalists?
I mean, it was awesome because it was my first experience, like attending the CAJs, and it was unreal, and I loved it. But of course, we know that my friend and colleague Amber Bracken, she won, the photojournalist of the year, and I am just really, really proud of her because she was arrested in November for doing her job as a photojournalist, and she was jailed for 3 days, and she went back, a month and a half later, back to the same place, and was determined, to do what she does, best. And so, I mean, everybody was freaking out that she won, and it was amazing. I mean, there was, I follow like the Indigenous reporters and some of the mainstream, but I mean, APTN won an award, Kathleen Martins. And you know what, though? I noticed that there was a lot of Indigenous stories written by journalists that were up for awards. And I was really impressed by the amount that I saw. And that shows that, Indigenous stories are being covered, more and more. And I would say like the ratio was actually really high with how many of those type of stories that were up and won. And it was amazing. It was great.
Yeah, I was noticing the same thing. And it's like, number one, I think it indicates that there's more of an impetus for those stories to be told. Obviously, that's in this country for at least the last year. That's where a lot of the focus has been. Number two, it shows that some of the best storytellers and some of the best photographers in the country are putting their efforts towards telling these stories, with still a lot more work to do, which leads me to this. You've been partnering up with the folks at Canada Land, and you've just released, or they've just released, with your efforts behind it, your first podcast documentary. Before, I know you got to get to the airport, but tell us about this really quick, Brandi.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much, Ron. I pitched this story all over the place for 3 years and nobody took it. And I finally pitched it to Canada Land in the form of a podcast doc, and they took it. They sent me to Tsleil-Waututh Nation in so-called North Vancouver. And I met the community members, told this unbelievable, incredible story of these, ancient pacts that they have with the sea wolves there, which are known as southern resident killer whales. And, they're, I was just absolutely blown away, and their fight against the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. I'm really thankful. It's told from an Indigenous perspective. There's some really, really powerful, incredible stories that the members shared with me in there. And I just really encourage everybody to go check it out. It's a story that you will remember forever, and that you will be impacted by, and yet you will view things differently by if you listen to it. So hi for that. Yes.
I've got it on my phone, and it's going to be my dog walk accompaniment today, Brandi. I've got my time dedicated, and I can't wait to check it out. You've got to run to the airport, but I have to ask you. I mean, I wanted to save this for the end because it's not the most important question, but Cypress Hill.
Oh my gosh. Yes, how cool is that? So
where was this?
This was outside our hotel, like where the CAJs are. And I was outside, right? And I was standing there, and I kept seeing like these guys, these rapper guys and stuff. I saw them like a couple of times, right?
Yeah.
And then I just smelled a whole bunch of like ganja is what they would call it back in the day. And I just said to myself, like, I was stereotyping them right away. I'm like, those guys are rappers. I did, right? But then I was like, well, they look pretty friendly. I'm just going to go say hello. And I was with one of my colleagues, and I just started talking to them. But then one of them had a Cypress Hill logo.
Yeah.
And and then they said they're Cypress Hill. And I'm like, and they're like, we just did a show here. And they invited me actually to go to Quebec City. They said, we'll give you tickets. Come on over there. And I'm like, well, how far is Quebec City? They're like 3 hours. And I'm like, oh, no, I can't make it. They were incredible. They were so cool. And they were our age. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it took me back to a 13-year-old, right?
Oh, yeah.
And insane in the membrane, So that was really neat. They were chill. They were really good. They were really cool.
Oh, man. I mean, and I can see, I love the photo that you posted too. He's just got one burning right there. He's just like, what a photo. Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. Oh, yeah. So did you or didn't you imbibe, Brandi? I don't know if I can help myself. I might have to ask you. It's one story to say you met Cypress Hill. It's another one to say you smoked a joint with Cypress Hill.
Oh my gosh, I don't.
Stories.
And I haven't for years. I have not for years, and no way. But you want to know something? In Montreal, I don't know what it is about this place. Maybe I don't get out much, but no, I was in Vancouver and stuff, but everywhere you go, you smell weed everywhere. Everywhere you walk on the street.
Everywhere in Montreal, really?
I'm like, is this the capital of and sometimes you're walking down and you're like, sometimes you go back to that old mode, like it's illegal. Yeah. And then you realize like it's out in the open, but here, and it's like summer here. It's gorgeous. Like yesterday it was like 25 or something. And here you smell it everywhere you walk. Maybe it's just because I'm downtown. I don't know.
Yeah. It's finding you, my friend. I don't know.
Yes.
Hey, listen, we got to let you run or you're going to miss your plane, and then you won't do any more interviews with us, so we can't have that. Brandi,
that's all good.
Such a fan, and people need to check out your Canada Land documentary right now. They can follow you on Twitter, find all the links at Songstress28. Thank you for doing this, my friend.
Hi. Have a good one. Thank you.
You got it. That's journalist Brandi Morin. I'm curious for your thoughts on this bigger picture, this commentary. It's happening in Canada and the U.S. Maybe we'll ask Charles Adler about it in just a second. He's going to be joining us. The National Post, the New York Post, both invoking that Trumpian phrase, fake news, talking about these unmarked mass graves outside the sites of former residential schools in Canada. Talk at ryanjesperson.com is where you can send us an email. Your thoughts are, I've seen a ton going on in the live chat right now. If you sit with this, if you're walking with this later in the day, if you're kind of digesting this over the next number of days, who knows, maybe it'll be a trash talk submission to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Charles Adler coming up in just a little bit. First things first, I wanted to remind you that we have our inaugural, our first ever Real Talk Golf Classic coming up Thursday, June 23rd at the Ranch Golf and Country Club. We still have a few spots available for foursomes. You go to ryanjesperson.com, you click on events and the Real Talk Golf Classic, and you'll find the registration link there. We tee off at 2 o'clock. It's going to be an amazing day of golf. If somebody hits a hole-in-one, the hole-in-one prizes are amazing.
We got to have like a gong or something.
Yeah, we'll have a big deal.
Like
well, there's going to
alarm.
be a Jeep there that you can win, courtesy of St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge. You, unfortunately, my friend, are ineligible. And not just because the chances of you or I hitting a hole-in-one are very slim. But I think if that ace drops, we'll have to just give that horn a workout on the Jeep.
Sure.
Because somebody's going to take it home.
Oh, yeah.
$40,000 cash up for grabs. We've got great food and beverages through the day, a steak dinner at the end of the day, and Infamous is going to be DJing day and night from the course and then during the dinner as well, all in support of the Real Talk Julie Rohr Scholarship. We'd love to have you there golfing with us on Thursday, the 23rd of June. Again, all the details at ryanjesperson.com. Just click on events. Our friends at Friesen Brothers want to invite you to join them in Fort Saskatchewan for a free weekend event. It's June 3rd through the 5th. 23 different bands to check out. It's the Big Bands Bash in Fort Saskatchewan. You can check out all the details on their website, friesen.com. That's coming up June 3rd through 5th. This coming weekend, what a celebration of family and, of course, good food. All the details at friesen.com. Our friends at Grand Dog Essentials want to remind you on their website, granddog.ca, if you've got questions about how quality raw food might benefit your dog or even your cat. I know we think of dogs when we think of Grand Dog Essentials, but they've got a whole new lineup. Under their blog, you can check out, there's so many great resources there. I always just drop in to see what I can learn about maybe why is my dog refusing their food, or what about probiotics and prebiotics? How do you properly thaw and store raw dog food? And again, more information for the cats too. You just go to shop now in the drop-down menu. There it is, cats. You can find some of the raw food there that's perfect for your cat as well as you endeavor to maybe make their life, the quality of life, the absolute best it can be. The promo code REALTALK gets you 10% off your first-time order at granddog.ca. At parkpower.ca, you can right now, today, compare rates on what you're paying versus what you could be paying for internet, electricity, and natural gas. If you bundle your utilities together through Park Power, you can save money. Plus, save even more when you sign up, when you bring your business over there. The promo code 2022-REALTALK gets you $70 off your first bill at parkpower.ca. You know, I was doing some, I was going to say landscaping. That is just an absolute lie.
I don't think you're a landscaper.
I wasn't doing any landscaping. I don't know why I even wanted to call it that. It's called mowing your lawn, weeding.
Yeah.
Spring cleanup, maybe.
Raking up some stuff.
Doing some raking, like some basic raking. I had the blower out, cleaning things up. I was really feeling, I got some dirt under my nails over the weekend. And at the end of it, I looked at my lawn and I just thought, gosh, this looks terrible.
I was gonna
It's
say.
life. No, it doesn't look good at all. It looks like a beautifully mowed, terrible lawn. And that's the reality when you have life with two dogs. I was thinking, I got to call Eden Landscaping and get this thing figured out. You know, they got solutions no matter what your challenge is. It might not be the dog spots. All the dog owners know about that. Maybe it's just that your yard's uninspired. Maybe it's that cookie cutter yard that you got with your new house. The builder does all the yards the same, that one lonely tree and just a whole bunch of sod. Eden Landscaping can bring your outdoor space to life. You can learn more and check out their portfolio at landscapeedmonton.ca. How was your weekend? Any landscaping for you, Johnny?
No, I didn't get to any lands. It's funny you say that though, because when I do something in the yard or like mow or like, you know, like even like, you know, sweep the dirt into the flower bed, I'm always like, I come in and I put my hands on my belt and I pull up my pants and my wife's like, just stop it, okay? You're an amateur. Like, what do you think? You know? We were actually driving though out near Devon on Saturday and just looking at the huge pieces of land out there on farms and just the perfectly manicured lawns. And she's just like, that is landscaping. Yeah. And it's just, it looks beautiful out there. And those people, man, it must take hours to mow those lawns.
Well, it does take hours.
Yeah.
Like you talked to, we have relatives that have, you know, rural properties, and you sign. It's like I say to my Uncle Clark out near Stony Plain, I say, how long does it take you to mow your lawn? He goes, yeah, a couple hours, few hours, that sort of a thing. But you know what? The key is a nice riding mower with a cup holder on it. That's all a guy needs.
Brew.
It's all a guy needs to be able to be content out there wearing your aviators, just just driving. You got these riding mowers. So how did you spend your weekend?
I spent my weekend working. It's wedding season and event season is in full swing. People are happy to be able to get together again and see each other without, well, there's still that fear in the back of your mind of COVID, but getting together and dancing and doing whatever. But I met a lot of Real Talk fans.
Was that right?
Yeah, and I'm getting I used to get noticed for being on the radio or a DJ or with the Oilers, and now it's like, hey, I hear you on the show. You're pretty good.
Oh, great.
Pretty good. But I did a CASA, great organization. I did their staff appreciation event on Friday.
Children and youth mental health. They do amazing work.
So I met 3 fans there. And then on Saturday, I did a wedding, Melanie, and here they are right here. Melanie and Chad Romanchuk. Beautiful
right
couple.
on.
You ever meet a couple and you're like, man, they're going to have a beautiful baby. They're just like, I don't mean to be
Did
like.
you tell them that?
I was just like, you guys are very attractive. But they also said, hey, we love Real Talk. And, since you've been on, we heard you back in the city. We had to have, because they had another DJ. And they came to me instead and said, hey, you're back.
Oh, wow.
We want you. I won't mention the DJ's
They
name.
broke up with the other DJ.
Yeah, but we had an absolute ball. Look at this reel that he put up after. This was after my 2-hour set because it closed at 12.
Sure.
This was the dance floor. This is how hard these Ukrainians, Romanchuk obviously partied. It is absolutely.
I love you didn't say these people, these wedding goers. You're like, this is how hard these Ukrainians
they stomp,
partied.
right? Like they stomp along to every song. This was the venue actually got a little not teed off, but they were like, what in the world?
So for people listening to the podcast, basically we're seeing it looks like the parquet floor, the Boston Celtics floor, except it's just busted up. All the tiles are busted up.
It's destroyed. But
from these Yukis having a great time. I love it.
They wanted to say, I wanted to give them a shout out and congratulate them. And also they wanted to say hi to you and just, they love you. They support you. And
that's amazing.
We talked a bit about the Real Talk Golf Classic, but it was at 12:30 with the lights on. So I'm not sure.
We might need to remind them.
Yeah, they were celebrating.
Yeah, I've got a lot of people that have promised me they're going to be at the Golf Classic, but it's always in the third period of the Battle of Alberta. And I'm like, I better float these folks a reminder the next. Well, a huge shout out to them. That's very cool stuff. Let's find out what our next guest was doing over the weekend. Last time we talked to Charles Adler, it was live from Las Vegas, baby. He was kind enough to step away from his, I don't know what you had. Was it like a grapefruit mimosa or something, Chuck, that you stepped away from for a brief second to talk to us?
Well, yeah, just here, I stepped away for this. Can everyone see?
Oh, a Perrier. Yes.
The reason I got some Perrier this morning is because I keep being called a media elite by Poilievre's crowd. So since I'm a media elite, I think I should drink Perrier.
Yeah, well, hey, why don't we tee this up for a second? You've actually served this up for us quite nicely, Johnny. Can we get to this? This is, and by the way, you'll have to excuse, or to our audience, I'll explain. We're not piping in the rock and roll under Pierre Poilievre. This is the video released by his team. He's rocking and rolling and talking about the liberal media elite. Here's the context, and then we'll get to Adler.
I'm undefeated in 7 consecutive elections in a big Ontario multicultural city. That's because I don't try to go through the liberal media to get my message out. I go around them. I deliver my message to millions of people through social media that we're seeing in the tens of thousands who've been coming out to my rallies, people who have never voted Conservative before in their lives.
I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't talk to the media. I go around them. Your thoughts?
That's just such bullshit. It's like everything he does. I mean, before I excommunicated Jason Kenney or Jason Kenney excommunicated me, Pierre Poilievre wanted to get on my show as often as possible. And full disclosure, I met Pierre Poilievre in Calgary many years ago, and he was considered a wunderkind. I don't want to get overly personal here. I did consider him very, very smart, but he was, I'm going to try to keep this clean. He was creepy. Okay. He just kind of creeped me out. I knew in my bones that he would be successful at anything he engaged in, but he creeped me out. But at the time, I didn't know that Pierre Poilievre would become a world-class bullshitter, which is, of course, what's happened. By the way, I want to dot some I's and cross some T's. I just had an ordinary weekend, lots of reading, lots of walking, lots of fun. I've got passion for everything I do these days. It's been a wonderful life. But did your producer, did John, was he caught on a podcast just moments ago lusting after a bride and groom, or is that just my
come on
imagination?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what just happened, Charles.
Come on.
That's what I heard.
Because I don't know what
I'm not Pierre Polyev. I'm not a bullshitter. It's real talk, and I'm just giving it to you. The unvarnished truth. That's what you're.
It's real talk. It is real talk.
I literally said to them after the ceremony, I went up, and when you're just awestruck by people, I was like, "You guys are hot." That's what I said. I just said it. Just came out.
It's okay. I was Chuck. I always like to refer to people as beauties. I'll say to someone, you beauties. I love you guys," or "Thanks, beauties." Then I was picking up dinner the other night from a local establishment, and as she hands me the bag of food, I walked out of there and I looked at her and her colleague and I said, "Thanks, babies." And then I had to throw on the brakes immediately and turn around, and we all kind of had our jaws drop, and I said, "That was definitely not what I intended to say." And we all burst out laughing. So I can recognize the feeling, John. Your excuse, I guess, is that they were both looking pretty solid in tux and wedding gowns.
Especially on your wedding day.
May have been a little starstruck.
Yeah.
May have been a little bit. It's like
looking great.
Like the old Chuck. What are the old sort of the Looney Tunes? I'm thinking of Bugs Bunny. What was his crush? Bugs. Remember every time he'd see her and he'd just get his eyes would turn into big hearts and he would start.
Babs Bunny? Is it Babs?
Was it
Bunny?
Babs? Something like that. Yeah, I don't know. That was a long time ago.
I think it happens at weddings. I think sometimes both the bride and groom look exceptional, and people get all hot and bothered about it, but they just don't talk about it publicly. So I'm not criticizing John. I'm just congratulating him for being a hell of a communicator, for saying what so many others are feeling, but they repress it. John is comfortable in his own skin.
Hey, this is why he's here on Real Talk, because we know no other way. So you... Over the weekend, and I love you keep talking about this, Charles, and it's like, I think it's like speaking to people. You keep talking about this passion you're feeling again. You're like, I'm walking, I'm moving around, I'm loving it. This is like this passion reinfused into you, and a lot of people are connecting, and it's evident on your social media as well, and you're starting to sort of chime in again on a lot of things, and I couldn't help but notice your take on what noted, what do you want to call him? I mean, he's famous. University of Toronto psychology prof Jordan Peterson, author as well, suggesting that he will never forgive the Prime Minister of Canada that his father was not at his daughter's wedding in the United States over the weekend. He's blaming the PM, and I know that you had something to say about it. I thought I'd set the table for you.
Well, Pierre Polyev and others, including Jordan Peterson, have been blaming Justin Trudeau for global inflation, which is, kind of funny on the one hand, serious on the other hand. But Jordan Peterson, who has sort of been pampering and diapering and feeding the anti-vax crowd, now admits, of course, that he has been vaccinated because he was in the United States attending his daughter's wedding. But for some reason, he wanted to complain about his father not being at the wedding and that being Justin Trudeau's fault. I mean, I was in Vegas, as you know, a few days ago, and had to get a rapid test because that's what the Americans demand before we go into the United States. And I'm perfectly fine with that because I'm perfectly fine sitting on a plane, in this case, a WestJet plane to Vegas, knowing that everyone on the plane has passed the test, is COVID negative. I'm totally good with that. And of course, if old man Peterson had gotten himself vaccinated and gotten himself tested, just like everyone else does, or almost everyone else does, he could have danced at his granddaughter's wedding. But Jordan Peterson decides to blame Justin Trudeau for this. Now, I realize Jordan Peterson is considered an intellectual, a published author, and all of that. But I think lately he's just kind of fallen in love with the fame and the cash flow of hooking up with the sort of far right-wing ecosystem. He just loves the attention, and he's starting to believe his own bullshit.
I mean, it is like when you talk about falling in love like that. I've not been there yet, but I can understand what it might be like to have literally millions of subscribers, right? Like millions of people watching your YouTube videos, downloading your podcast. I mean, even this tweet, it doesn't even have to be accurate. I mean, you can blame the prime minister that your dad's not at your daughter's wedding and 80,000 people like it. 9,000 people retweet it. I mean, accuracy, sure, but if you were accurate about why your daughter's grandfather wasn't at the wedding, I'm not sure a lot of people would find it that stimulating. But if you make something up that can allow people, you kick the hornet's nest, so to speak, and it resonates. Obviously, we're talking about fake news today in the context of what the New York Post is saying about these residential schools. The real fake news, it sells, doesn't it? And there's really no reason. I mean, you talked about Pierre Poilievre earlier. I'm not grouping them all in together, but if you can say things to rile up your base and further your message without these fact checks that come with, mainstream media interviews, why would you do anything else?
We're in the post-truth era, the post-fact era. I mean, there's no way to put lipstick on this pig and not see it as a pig to you and me, because thank goodness we're still grounded. Now, would we be less grounded if we had tens of millions of followers? I sure hope we still would be. I'm always thinking about. I stand on the shoulders of my mom and dad. They taught me how to be and how to be real and stay real and how important honesty was. And I know your mom and dad taught you the same thing. Now, I have no idea what Jordan Peterson's parents taught him. I don't want to throw his parents under the bus, but I was just thinking if Jordan Peterson's dad was married to my mom, there's no bloody way that he wouldn't be dancing at his granddaughter's wedding, because my mom would, take him down to Shoppers or Rexall or whatever, and make sure that he got the jab. And if he was giving her guff about that, she would just throw his clicker away. Just tell him to, get out of the recliner, get out of watching Fox and reading Rex and doing all those grumpy things that many people do, grumping their way all the way to the grave. It's no way to live a life. But my point is, there is no way that my mom would allow him to just sit in that recliner and keep bitching about the world. She'd be getting him down to the drugstore, getting the jab, getting the test, and getting it done. And that is how so many people in this country are right now. You've got a lot of mostly grumpy guys, some of whom don't believe in all of this. And thankfully, many of them are married. And I just want to, take this opportunity to thank the women of Canada for strongly motivating, encouraging the men of Canada, their husbands mainly, and boyfriends, and dads and uncles to get vaccinated.
I remember I was involved with the Movember movement in Canada for a long time. I sat on the Movember Edmonton committee for a number of years. You know what I found was a fascinating statistic? And this was a statistic from, I think it was like 2015, 2016. I can't imagine it's changed too much. But the annual messaging, yes, Movember is about prostate cancer, and then they evolved the movement to be about men's health, which included men's mental health, which is hugely important. Charles, you and I both know, and our audience knows, I think, that men disproportionately die by suicide, and that these are conversations that desperately need to happen. When it came to the role that women play, oftentimes in men's health, that 75%, this was per Movember Canada, the statistic, 75% of men's annual physicals in Canada were booked by women. Isn't that wild? 75% were booked by women.
Well, look, we could do multiple hours on this and get people on who are real talkers, who are listening and watching right now. There are thousands of stories across this country of men who would be dead right now, dead, if it weren't for the women in their lives, generally wives, girlfriends, daughters, nieces, strongly encouraging them to take care of business. Because for some reason, I'm not wise enough to know this now. I think Jordan Peterson's a psychologist, so maybe in a previous life he would have been able to explain this. But for some reason, men are more likely than women to be in denial of their physical and psychological needs and how to service those needs. Men are much less likely to want to go to a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, whatever, than a woman will. And you can interview a number of psychiatrists, whether they're male or female, they'll tell you that. And I think that has stayed relatively consistent over the years, despite a lot of education, a lot of public service campaigns telling people, hey, it's not a stigma. There's something inside the DNA, I don't want to get into the whole business about the brain science here because it's well above my pay grade. But there is something inside men that keeps them in denial. And thank God, women get us out of it.
I appreciate that, Chuck. I want to ask you about this NRA convention in Houston. Obviously, the timing of it is gross, but I don't want to sort of like impose my view on this. I want to get the Titan of Talks take on it in just a second. We're talking to Charles Adler. As if I need to tell you that really quickly, I want to remind you that our friends at Infinity Healthcare right now, if you're a licensed practical nurse and you're looking for work, or maybe this whole pandemic experience has got you realizing that you need a change of pace, right? You've been in the hospitals, you've been there on the front line over the last 2 years, and you're looking for something a little bit different. Today could be the day that your entire career changes, that you move off in an entirely new and rewarding direction. Infinity Healthcare is looking for licensed practical nurses right now to help transform their clients' home healthcare needs. You got to have 2 to 5 years of experience within nursing, be a great communicator, and be an individual that inspires those they supervise. You can learn more about what life might be like working with Infinity Healthcare at infinity-8.ca. It's reliable, consistent home care. That's Infinity Healthcare. Our friends at Local Environmental invite you to keep it local when you're looking for services like water hauling, vacuum trucks, fencing, portable toilets. I saw a real talker by the name of Scarlett over the weekend wondering, do I know anybody in the portable toilets game? I don't know what, maybe she's planning a festival or a gathering, a charity event. Local Environmental Services works across the prairies, Alberta and Saskatchewan, still family owned. They want to compete for your business. Maybe you're a retailer that's not happy with your garbage or recycling collection. Get in touch with them today at localenvironmental.ca. At Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge, you're going to find Alberta's best selection of Ram trucks and of the entire Jeep lineup as well. Why? Well, number one, because they've got these beautiful big dealerships, but number two, they're able to share their inventory to help you find exactly what you're looking for. So whether you're looking to ramp it up, so you find something you can pull your boat with, pull your family's trailer with, or maybe downsize. Fuel costs have you down. You're looking to downsize. You can find your new whip at Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge. All right. We're looking to talk to Charles Adler about this NRA convention down in Houston. But first, I want to tee this up. This is a video. This is, I don't know if you'd call it satire. I don't know if you might call it an intrepid bit of comedy. But this from a group called the Good Liars, who infiltrated the NRA convention over the weekend to make a statement. I wanted to play it in its entirety. It's pretty good. Check it out.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the gentleman at microphone 1A.
Thank you. My name is Jason Selvig, and I'm from West Palm Beach, Florida. And I would like to say that I am sick and tired of the left-wing media, and frankly, people in this room today, spreading misinformation about Wayne LaPierre. Whenever there's a mass shooting, they all say that Wayne LaPierre isn't doing enough to stop these mass shootings, and even implying that Wayne LaPierre has played a part in making it easier for these shooters to get guns, to get weapons. You heard it after Las Vegas. You heard it after Pulse nightclub in Orlando. You heard it after Columbine. You heard it after Parkland. You heard it after Virginia Tech. You heard it after Sandy Hook. You heard it after El Paso. You heard it after Buffalo. You kept hearing that Wayne LaPierre isn't doing enough, and frankly, that's not true. The NRA, under Wayne LaPierre's leadership, has provided thoughts and prayers to the victims and their families. And maybe these mass shootings would stop happening if we all thought a little bit more and we prayed a little bit more. So I'm asking everyone in this room to think, to pray. Give your thoughts and your prayers and your thoughts and your prayers and your prayers and your thoughts. And if we give enough of these thoughts and these prayers, these mass shootings will stop. So I want to thank you, Wayne LaPierre, for all your thoughts and all your prayers. Thank you.
Charles, he gets through the entire 2-minute address here to Wayne LaPierre and the NRA, his thoughts and prayers, right? Nobody quite knows what to do with it, I think, which leads me to believe that they figured it was pretty serious and maybe even right on target, no pun intended. What a weekend to be holding the NRA convention.
If you had a character generator, doing a real number on it, you could put up the words, "They don't get it." They don't get the issue. They don't even get someone who's, I think at some point, to most objective observers, is obviously slapping them around, just slapping them around with their own stuff. And they just don't get it. And, the thing about this thoughts and prayers business is, and I'm not a religious person. I don't want to pretend to be a religious person, but I honestly think that when you respond to mass shootings with the thoughts and prayers, I think in many ways you're mocking God. Now, I could get above my pay grade talking about neuroscience and how men are more likely to be in denial because of women, and it's because of how they're wired. I could also get into a lot of trouble with theologians, I suppose, on this thing. But, even though I'm not a religious person, I've had the benefit of a lot of great teaching, great philosophical teaching, debate coaching, and other pursuits from very, very religious people, some of them Jesuits, okay? So I do not disparage the minds. I do not disparage many of the values that many religious people have. But I have yet to meet a religious scholar in any major faith who could ever convince himself and themselves that this business of thoughts and prayers is going to stop a crisis. I mean, the idea, the Japanese have almost no shootings and certainly no school shootings. Is it because the Japanese think and pray more? None of my Jesuit teachers would ever try to make that case. I think beyond everything else, they're insulting God.
People are checking in on the live chat here, and Tracy says, I think they get the issue, they just don't care, right? And to me, it's like I don't know. Maybe we're just wired differently. To me, it feels like when it comes to some of the more common sense stuff that I might suggest might be common sense. Maybe you might. I mean, you're the inventor of Canadian common sense. You might sit there and say, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. An 18-year-old, maybe an 18-year-old with mental health challenges, or maybe just any 18-year-old should be able to just walk into a store without a background check, without a parental signature, without sort of a waiting period, and be able to purchase an AR-15 and a whole bunch of ammo and body armor. I'm not sure it makes sense that should be allowed to happen. And then on the heels of, I don't know, like 20 children, being murdered in cold blood. I hate even just putting it like that way in sort of like a glib passing fashion, because it's just so horrific and gut-wrenching. They're two teachers as well. The husband of one of the teachers dying of a heart attack at 50 years. I mean, it's just the spill-off effect. How many thousands of lives ruined by this, Charles? And you sit there and say, like, I'm not sure that we should be gathering in Houston over the weekend to celebrate the right to bear arms, to celebrate or stand steadfast in the amendment that allows or permits for this. And then I just kind of go, I'm not sure that there's any meeting in the middle here. There doesn't seem to, I don't see any meaningful action. I mean, President Joe Biden a few days ago saying it's unacceptable, it's unbelievable that you should be able to buy an AR-15. What do you need that other than killing humans? Like, you're the president, man. Like if the president's kind of, in a sense, throwing up his arms, like that tweet basically, Charles, was like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? Like, where's the conversation going?
There's a lot of ideological poisoning in the United States. I never get any pleasure criticizing because, I've got many relatives in the United States. I've got many friends, many listeners, did many years there. They were very, very good to me. So this isn't about, the folks, but there is a lot of ideological poisoning. And this is why I really get on my haunches about how the word freedom is abused in this country. Because I've seen this movie. And in the name of freedom, people feel, many of them, I'm not talking about some, multiple millions of people, including NRA members, feel that they will lose freedom. They will lose all of their freedoms if they don't have that Second Amendment right that they've got, literally to bear arms. It doesn't matter what the founding fathers were all about and how it was about a militia, the need for a militia. None of that stuff matters. They believe that all of their freedoms are at stake, every single one of them, if they give an inch on arms. And so they will tell people, they certainly told me, many of them did over the many years I was there, Chuck, a school shooting happens, all kinds of horrific gun violence happens. Chuck, this is the price of freedom. And many of the people telling me that were not running for office. They weren't, going public about this. They believed it in their hearts. And that's why I call it ideological poisoning. And I don't know how you get that out of the body politic. I don't know how you do it. And I don't pretend to know.
I wanted to ask you about this before we thank you for your time. On Friday, Canada's Supreme Court struck down what the Star, Betsy Powell, the courts reporter for the Star out of Toronto, is calling or quoting as the degrading parole ineligibility law for mass murders. It'll have an impact on the sentencing of Alec Manassian. People will remember him killed 10 people in a van attack on Toronto's Yonge Street back in 2018. But of course, we think of other high-profile Canadian criminals, right? Anytime you talk about parole in extreme circumstances, I referenced this with Supriya Dwivedi, our mutual friend, on Friday. You think of Karla Homolka, for example. Of course, the conversation will go to Paul Bernardo and others. But with regards to the Supreme Court's ruling, I was looking forward to asking you how you're processing it, whether you think it's a move in the right direction, a curious move. What do you think?
Well, I didn't like the ruling. I'm all for consecutive sentences. You murder 10 people, get 10 life terms, which means you just stay in the bucket forever. I'm totally for that. And I was for Harper's legislation. But even when I was for Harper's legislation, I was very well aware from constitutional lawyer friends of mine, some of whom were right of center, some of whom were left of center, that this would never pass Supreme Court muster. That and of course it didn't. Most of the judges on the court are Harper appointed judges. It wouldn't pass Supreme Court muster because the charter is the charter. And although the words aren't specifically in the charter is, that's where we derive our rights from. The charter would not allow justices to say that one murderer gets the opportunity, not paroled, but the opportunity to get a hearing after 25 years, and the other one gets the opportunity after 200 years, meaning never gets the opportunity. Because of what the charter is really all about, and it really is all about equality. No justice, whether they're conservative, liberal, or neither, all of the above, it doesn't matter. This is not that difficult an issue for justices to deal with. It's open and shut. And by the way, Stephen Harper knew that it was open and shut. Stephen Harper knew that this wouldn't pass muster. So over the weekend, he talked about how the lives of the families have been degraded. Look, the people that we're talking about, whether we're talking about Manassian, whether we're talking about Robert Picton, Bernardo, Bissonnette in Quebec, the one who gunned down Muslim worshippers, none of them are ever getting out of the bucket, because the opportunity to have a hearing is not the same thing as getting out. Clifford Olson had hearings.
Yeah.
Clifford Olson didn't get out. So this isn't about me defending liberals or conservatives or justices. This is about the charter, and we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and some people don't like the charter, but that's where we derive our rights from. And if a law doesn't pass constitutional muster, it's going to get struck down. Stephen Harper knew that. A lot of politicians want to pass, if they're doing the tough on crime, the law and order fine. I'm a law and order guy. I'm a tough on crime guy, but I'm a constitutional guy at the end of the trail. This is a nation not of men and women. This is a nation of laws, and the charter is our law. And sometimes a politician doesn't really care, to be brutally honest. The politician goes, maybe I can't have the law. Maybe it'll be struck down the road. But I got the politics. I got the issue. I'm on the right side of the issue.
Yeah. You mentioned Alexandre Bissonnette, and I should mention that the decision that was released Friday relates to that. It was released in the case of his desire to seek parole after serving 25 years behind bars. Not that he has yet, but when he does, after fatally shooting, as you mentioned, 6 worshipers at a Quebec City mosque, 6 Muslim worshipers back in 2017. Charles, I've had these interesting conversations with a friend of mine, and she works, she's a counselor. I don't know what her actual title is within corrections, but she works with, like, this is not what they're called. This is the colloquial term, but like heinous offenders, like the worst of the worst, right? People that have sexually abused children and murderers and stuff like that. I mean, her job is remarkably stressful, and she doesn't talk much about it, and she can't talk much about it, and we don't ask much about it. But we've had some interesting conversations. She's held my feet to the fire for comments that I've made on the radio in past. Clifford Olson would be a good example of where I've asserted that I don't believe. And again, people will say, well, what does your belief have to do with it? There should be evidence, and I'm not citing evidence, and this is just real talk, and this is my opinion, to be clear. But I just, quite frankly, Charles, don't believe that, for example, a child sex offender, someone that sexually abuses children, or that somebody that kidnaps or kills children can be rehabilitated. I'm not sure that there's somebody that's been sexually abusing or killing children that all of a sudden has this epiphany, this moment in prison where all of a sudden they're not. And again, I know that this will probably get some angry emails, and that's fine. This is my opinion. And I know that people have talked about, well, there can be chemical castration, or there can be different measures, there can be whatever. My thought has always been, and this probably wouldn't stand up in front of the Supreme Court of Canada, that's fine, but I'm probably not the only Canadian that feels a little bit more comfortable that a serial predator would be kept behind bars for the rest of their life, right? That's just something I think that the general public, most people would say, yeah, that sounds sort of like the right way to handle it. But at the same time, the Supreme Court saying that perspective that I'm having, that I'm espousing here, is degrading and it's inhumane. And that's the court's ruling. And I think that there are some comments here that are correct. For example, on our live chat, we've got people saying, like Glenna, for example, watching live. Good morning, Glenna says, eligibility for parole doesn't mean it will ever happen. And she's right. But I find myself just kind of the like human being side of me, just the real part of me. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a mental health professional. And I don't know if I'm cut from the cloth. I don't know if I have what it would take to be that type of person, but I don't know. When it comes to inhumane, and again, this is maybe dumbing down the conversation, but when it comes to inhumanity and what we're talking about, the most inhumane thing is the actions of the perpetrator, not the fact that they're behind bars for the rest of their life without eligibility for parole. But I don't know. That's just where my head's at with it.
Look, I'm very, very close to you in many ways, and I'm on exactly the same page as you on all of this. I just know that countries that don't have a strong constitutional foundation with separation of justice from your emotions and mine, it just tends not to work out very well. But here's the last week we talked about we can talk about who to vote for in Alberta, Conservative, the UCP, Liberal Party, to the extent that there's a Liberal Party, the Alberta Party, the NDP, and I'm so much for at some point just trashing. You can't trash the political system and the party system, obviously, but I just trashing this idea that we have to vote for parties. I want to vote for human beings. I care about human beings here, and I just want to ask you, human being to human being, do you have enough faith in the human beings, your fellow Canadian human beings, at a parole board? Enough faith to believe, in this case, it is, on faith, I suppose, because it hasn't happened yet. But do you believe that Robert Pickton will ever see any liberty? Do you think Paul Bernardo will ever be allowed out? Do you think Bissonnette will ever be allowed out, or Manassi? I mean, I could go down the list. I mean, do you have a belief that somehow the parole board down the road will become so twisted and mangled and degraded that they will degrade our country, and they will degrade the victims of these, the families of these victims, by allowing these people out? Because I don't mean to be rude here. I need to load the barrel and answer my own question, then ask you for your answer. If I were to believe that, I would cease to have any joy in life, okay? Because I would cease to have any confidence in my fellow human beings. I'm a social animal. I'm not an island. I'm not a rock. I'm a Canadian. And if I actually started to believe that parole boards would be releasing Robert Pictons into our country, I honestly don't know what I would do with my Canadian passport.
Yeah. I mean, I have to assume that there would be public outrage. Then again, if you look at the mechanism of how the justice system or the legal system is supposed to work, it has nothing to do and should not be influenced by public outrage, right? And so, I mean, gosh, we were talking to journalist Jana Pruden, I think it was last Tuesday, if I remember correctly, about her feature and her relationship that she was able to develop with David Milgaard, who obviously passed away just a short time ago. And you know, I mean, perhaps outrage is what led to, quite frankly, shoddy police work that essentially convicted or led to the arrest and conviction of an innocent man. And so we don't want our judicial system to be influenced by public outrage. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, I guess I'd probably be one of those that would be out with a picket sign were someone like Paul Bernard. I mean, but then Karla Homolka's out, so I don't know.
Yeah,
like, is it that ridiculous to suggest that Bernardo could be out if Homolka's out?
Well, hang on. No, Karla Homolka is different. Karla Homolka did a deal. It was called a deal with the devil at the time. I was actually in, Southern Ontario at the time. It happened. Sometimes I feel like Forrest Gump. I've been too close to too many situations. I've got too much to say. But in the case of Karla Homolka, it was the grossest thing I'd ever seen in my life. And most police would agree with that, and most justices and most lawyers would agree with that. But for some reason, they believed that without Karla Homolka helping them to convict Paul Bernardo, it couldn't have happened. And she got a deal for that, just like a lot of snitches and others get deals to help bring about convictions. So Karla Homolka did not get convicted the way Bernardo did in the case of the law. And sometimes the law is an ass. God knows the law was an ass in that particular case. And so Homolka did have the opportunity to get freedom because she did not get the same penalty, the same conviction that Bernardo got. Had it not been for Karla Homolka helping with that tape that was the smoking tape, the smoking gun, as it were, had she not helped provide that evidence, you wouldn't have the situation that we're talking about. So I think it's a bit of an apples and oranges. In my perfect world, would Karla Homolka be in prison for life? Absolutely. In my world, if I have to make a value judgment here, there's not a dime's worth of difference between Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo.
That's Charles Adler, the Titan of Talk. You can follow him on Twitter at Charles Adler. Catch him here every second Monday on Real Talk. Be well, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
You got it. Jill says, does anybody know what it's like to be a woman and see a post, or a public release from police that says, at person X is being released today. We believe this sex offender is likely to reoffend. So, okay, good luck out there, ladies. What about the ones, again, the ones that have targeted children, right? Police letting you know. It happens every week in a Canadian city. Every week, a police department, FYI, this person's being released, and we believe there's a high likelihood they will reoffend. And a lot of you are going to say, so what, Jesperson? Your take is that you should jail people based on what they might do or what you think they're going to do, right? The way that our sentencing works is that you've paid your debt to society, and if you've paid your debt to society, then society owes it to you to have a chance to rehabilitate yourself, to live a new and renewed life. I mean, those releases to me are gut-wrenching, right? Like, and if you talk to police officers, they'll tell you that, these folks that are released, are under more surveillance than anybody realizes. But then you also talk to cops that'll tell you that resources are strained and that they aren't able to oversee everything that they're wanting to, or they're not able to surveil every person that demands that type of supervision or whatever you want to call it. We're not going to solve these issues here on the show, but we promise you we'll keep talking about them, and we sincerely care about where you land on this. We welcome your emails anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We're talking about criminal justice. Maybe that's an area of interest for you. Maybe that's a career opportunity for you. At Athabasca University, Canada's online university, there are hundreds and hundreds of different world-class accredited online programs and courses that offer you the flexibility to learn at your own pace on a schedule that suits your lifestyle. You want to look into a career in criminal justice? You can check out their programs and courses under the drop-down menu at athabascau.ca. Or maybe it's something completely different: human resources, artificial intelligence, science, whatever. They've got it for you at athabascau.ca. Over the weekend, my little guy and I, Wyatt Rudy, popped back at Dairy Queen, Northwest Edmonton Dairy Queen in Westmount. I'm happy to report that he gave 100%. I asked him, it was a 2 thumbs up grade to the Oreo Dirt Pie Blizzard. This is the one he especially liked, the gummy worms in there. He goes, "Dad, there's gummy worms in the Blizzard." I said, "I know, kiddo." I went with the drumstick Blizzard this time.
Okay.
And we brought Mama home the strawberry cheesecake Blizzard. Now, that's not on the special summer menu. The strawberry cheesecake is one of the OG Blizzards. You can get that anytime. I highly recommend it. I had to tax Carrie's Blizzard as I was bringing it home. I had to tax it 2 scoops. That strawberry cheesecake Blizzard is something special. You can ask for them and let them know that Real Talk sent you at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. That's Baseline Road, Westmount, Newcastle, Nemeo, and Palisades. Now, oh, and by the way, I wanted to mention, I had a question. I fielded this question I saw in our live chat from Tracy, who wondered, is there any baby news? There is no Baby
Watch
news.
2022. We're on
Baby
it right
Watch
now.
2022.
Breaking news.
The entire team is on Baby Watch.
Nothing has happened.
Nothing yet.
And I was waiting this weekend.
This is could be an hour by hour. Put it this way: I turned the ringer on my phone for the first time. The ringer is turned on for about the first time in 3 years.
So you're ready.
I got to make sure that I'm ready to answer the call of duty.
I might call you
when it arrives. Please don't call me. If you're not my wife or my mom, please don't call me.
I'm trying to bug you.
You can text me anytime.
Right.
But here's the deal, Real Talkers. And if you subscribe to our Real Talk Sunday message, it's easy and it's free, obviously, to subscribe. You go to ryanjesperson.com, scroll to the bottom of the page. You can subscribe to our email. You'll get it every Sunday night. It lets you know some of the highlights from the week that was and some of the highlights we're looking forward to in the week to come. And we let you know in the Real Talk Sunday message that if there's no baby, we'll be doing shows every day this week, per usual. And if there is an arrival, then we will let you know by way of our official Twitter account at Real Talk RJ. And of course, you can follow my personal account as well at Ryan Jesperson. And we'll let you know what's going on with the team and with this new arrival. We're obviously all very excited in our household, and we thank you for all of the well wishes. We see you, we hear you, your messages on Carrie's Instagram at Carrie Skelton and mine as well. It really, really means a lot. Every Monday, our friends at Kuby Energy get us, our weeks really started off on the right foot. They get us focused on the positive, the stories that don't always get told in the news headlines. We call it positive reflections. And I want to thank a Real Talker, Devin Hargraves, for putting this story on our radar. Devin and his wife, Miranda, have been providing shelter. They've been providing hospitality for refugees from Ukraine down in their home city of Lethbridge. And this is such a great story. If you want to see it in its entirety, you can check out Devin's Twitter at Devin Hargraves. He says, my wife Miranda and I are just incredibly grateful to Dr. Chuck and the folks at Clearly Dental in Lethbridge. He says, as well as an incredibly generous anonymous donor who covered some costs. Check this out. This story is very, very cool. John, can you put up that photo for me? This is great. This is Julia. It's one of their new friends. She had braces on, and they were out of their depth, says Devin, in navigating getting the braces removed. It was time for them to come off. And they had to arrange retainers as well. It's the next step in getting your teeth straight, right? So they had to figure out coverage and financial support. It's not cheap. And so people started making phone calls and setting up appointments and driving these new Canadians from Ukraine to their appointments. And so Combined Family all worked together and essentially came up with a deal. Dr. Chuck was the one that was able to make this happen for them, which is just such a cool move. They said, we can't thank the very kind individual. They don't even know who it is. An anonymous donor contributing all of the necessary funding to make sure that these orthodontic services happen. Devin says, I'm still picking my jaw up off the floor. The cost was not insignificant. Says it's very much appreciated. Says Devin, Lethbridge is a city with open hearts, and I couldn't be more proud to call this place home. These are the small things. I mean, they're not small in the lives of people who need these services, like Julia, who's new to Canada. But the stories that don't always lead the headlines. But they're the stories that remind us that everyday folks are taking big steps to welcome refugees to Canada, to eliminate financial barriers for people who don't have access to things like dental care, who are restoring our faith in humanity or reminding us that good is out there. If you have a positive reflection you'd like to share with us, we welcome your submissions. You can email them to the show. Of course, you can hit us up on social media as well, Instagram or Twitter. Just use the hashtag RealTalkRJ. Positive reflections presented every Monday, or at least the first show of every week, by our friends at Kuby Energy. And you can get your free solar quote today at kubyenergy.ca. Our Real Talk Roundtable on Friday featured 3 Edmonton City councillors and their response to a letter from Alberta's Justice Minister suggesting they're not doing enough to be tough on downtown crime. Coming up tomorrow, we'll get a response from the top. The Mayor of Edmonton, Amarjeet Sohi, will join us. His response to Minister Tyler Shandro calling him out. In the meantime, make it a great Monday, friends. Thank you for joining us for Real Talk. Thanks for liking, subscribing, and sharing our content, leaving a comment on exactly the shows that have resonated with you and letting us know why. It helps fuel our editorial process. It helps us ensure that Real Talk happens every day right here. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, technical producer John Hicks, managing director Josh Dunford, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is the flagship property of Relay Communications Group Incorporated. All rights reserved. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.